everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. This article came out today. This is from Times of Israel. This is Defense Minister Yoav Gallant of Israel, who says, Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, hoping to turn Ramadan into second stage of October 7th. And that caught my eye, and it doesn't surprise me for a couple different reasons. One, you may remember back in November, we were covering articles like this. We're looking at Haaretz, Hamas official. We will repeat October 7th attacks until Israel is annihilated. And that may seem laughable because they're not doing so well in Gaza, and Israel has, made progress, and they're about to hit this last main city in Rafah, which is on the border with Egypt. And it's like, well, it doesn't look like you're doing too well, guys. But, they said that they would do this. But in addition, I've always been kind of skeptical that they were acting alone, that they hadn't consulted Iran or Hezbollah, that this wasn't part of a larger plan. It just, to me personally, it didn't really make sense. They must have known that this would spell the end of Hamas if they were to carry out an attack like they did, because they made it really, really brutal. And I've entertained this theory that the reason why they were so brutal is because they wanted to provoke Israel in such a way that Israel would have to hit them back really hard. And then they would play the sympathy card, which they've done pretty well all across the world. All the seculars and leftists are all galvanized in their support for Hamas. And, in the very beginning days of the war, Iran was threatening Israel that if they did the ground invasion, they wouldn't be able to stand by and just watch, And so in this way, the way that the war has progressed, I feel like they can make the argument, look, we showed maximum restraint. We gave them warning after warning after warning, and they were so heavy-handed in their response, and their response was so disproportionate, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Like, the longer this goes and the more they can get support from the rest of the world, I think it'll make it that much easier for them to make the case that Israel needed to be attacked. And if Iran or others did conduct war against Israel and invaded Israel, they may have that justification, or the max amount of justification. And then ultimately, I'm sure their plan would be to dismantle Israel, to destroy it. So them talking about second stage, I think that's right. Now, these are the words of Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, but guess what? He's been right in the past. You might remember, I'll have to find it. Here it is. You might remember this from last April, before the war started, and we covered this on the channel. Gallant warns multi-front war far more likely for Israel than limited conflicts. And that is, in fact, what ended up happening. I've found Gallant to be correct time and time again. And so I think that this is going to happen during Ramadan, which is coming up in March and April. But him talking about a multi-front war, that was back in April of last year. And then we have this article. Gallant says Israel being attacked from seven sides has hit back at 6. And he essentially called this war a 7-front war. And the last one that they haven't hit back at directly is Iran. But you have Iran, you have the militia groups in Iraq, in Syria. So 1, 2, 3. And then you have Hezbollah, 4. Different groups within the West Bank, 5. Of course, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, 6. And then we have the Houthi rebels in Yemen, 7. So he turned out to be right. This is currently the situation. You have these 7 fronts that Israel's dealing with. So let's see what he says. Okay. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Israel has identified that Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas are aiming to take advantage of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan and turn it into, quote unquote, the second stage of October 7th and ignite the ground. before we continue, let me just show you the dates. So I pulled this up on Islamic Finder. Ramadan this year is going to go from the 11th of March until the 9th of April. And let's hop over to Hebcal, which has the Gregorian calendar as well as the Hebrew calendar. And in red, I put the days of Ramadan. So here, starting March 11th. And then interestingly, it's going to end on the 1st of Nisan on the Hebrew calendar. So remember, the Hebrew calendar has 4 New Years. One of them is the way that they number the months, starting with Nisan, which is associated with Judah, because they associate each month with the tribe of Israel. So this is the first month, Nisan, and Ramadan's going to end on the 1st of Nisan. And the day before that is the day of the eclipse. So this is a very interesting period of time right here. General conference, and then the eclipse, and then the 1st of Nisan. And now we can add to that the last day of Ramadan, all happening within these 3 days. Very interesting. On top of that, it's around this time that if the red heifers are still kosher, they'll sacrifice them. I haven't been able to pinpoint the exact day. We've looked at the fact that you have special Sabbaths in Judaism, and one of them is Shabbat Parah. This is essentially the last Sabbath, or maybe it's like second to last Sabbath, before Nisan, to give a warning to the nation, to all Jews, that if you're going to Jerusalem, remember you have to be pure. Remember, you have to be purified with the ashes of the red heifer. So remember that. So we don't know if that's the day that they would sacrifice the heifer. We don't know if it would actually be the 2nd of Nisan, because according to Jews, it was the 2nd of Nisan that the first red heifer was sacrificed during the days of Moses. But what we've heard in these different videos by CBN News, it's a Christian news group. They have interviewed the people that are going to be doing the sacrificing, and they were talking about Passover. And I don't know if that's just any day of Passover, because you have this entire week. I don't know if it's the first day of Passover. But so we have these 3 potential dates, but the fact of the matter is it's happening at a time where there's heightened tensions, and them successfully sacrificing the red heifer is going to make it all the worse. Both Hezbollah and Hamas have talked about the red heifers and how they're worried about if they get the ashes, it's going to embolden the Jews to make changes on the Temple Mount, right? So anyway, just look. Okay. Speaking during an assessment at the IDF Central Command, Gallant says, quote, Hamas's main goal is to take Ramadan with an emphasis on the Temple Mount and Jerusalem, and turn it into the second phase of their plan that began on October 7th. This is the main goal of Hamas. It is being amplified by Iran and Hezbollah. We must not give Hamas what it has not been able to achieve since the beginning of the war, and converge the combat fronts, Gallant warns. So by that, I can only assume he means instead of like having these separate fronts where you have Hamas down here, Hezbollah up here. I mean, they're kind of fighting in conjunction. There's also other skirmishes taking place on the West Bank. But if you're able to converge all those efforts and become more coordinated and more unified against Israel, I think that's what he's talking about. And remember, so far we've seen limited conflict between Israel and Hezbollah in the north. But Israel's running out of patience. We talked about that recently because they want their people to be able to come back home to this buffer zone that they've created to keep their citizens safe. They need Hezbollah to move further north and away from the border. But Israel's losing patience, and it seems like all-out war is going to happen with Hezbollah. So we're reaching that point as this is happening, as it seems they're getting ready for phase 2, according to Yoav Gallant. Okay, so anyway, continuing. In comments apparently aimed at National Security Minister Itmar Ben-Gvir, and by the way, Ben-Gvir, he is kind of a radical fella. Okay, so he seems to enjoy stoking uh, the flames and tensions between Israel and the Islamic world. This is him right here. He's a very inflammatory individual. I've seen a lot of things that he's done, but just as an example, he knew that this would cause outrage by him going to the Temple Mount. Like whenever you have an Israeli official that's in the government, it upsets the Palestinians, of course. Not to say that he can't legally do that and that it's not his right, but both sides were warning him not to do that in order to keep down tensions, but he still did it. He did it May 20, or this article is from May 21st. Okay, here he is. And then he did it again. This is July, so a couple months later. And for all I know, maybe he's done it a few other times, but I know of these 2 times that he's gone up there. And as expected, it increased tensions. He does not care. He does not care one bit. So, in comments apparently aimed at National Security Minister, that's who he is, the National Security Minister, Itmar Ben-Gvir, Gallant warns against, quote, irresponsible statements from people who are supposed to be responsible, end quote. That could result in an escalation within a short time. Ben-Gvir has sought to impose restrictions on West Bank Palestinians and prevent them from praying on the Temple Mount during Ramadan, and is even reportedly pushing for banning Arab Israeli citizens below the age of 70 from visiting the site amid the month of fasting. So, yeah, he doesn't have much mercy. I can understand needing some restrictions because there have been flare-ups at the Temple Mount during Ramadan over the last couple of years. Let me show you what I mean. So I had to look it up. So what we have here, okay, so we have to go back to 2014. On the 5th of November 2014, Israeli police entered Al-Aqsa for the first time. So that's like the main mosque. It's not the Dome of the Rock. It's where they do the praying and stuff is in Al-Aqsa. It's this one right here with like this darker colored dome. Okay, that's Al-Aqsa. So Israeli police entered Al-Aqsa for the first time since capturing Jerusalem in 1967, said Sheikh Azam al-Khatib, director of Islamic Waqf. Okay, so from the Six-Day War, I guess, in 1967 until 2014, Israeli police had not gone into the mosque, but they did in 2014. And then as far as I know, they haven't since that time until we have this April 2021, and then April 2022, and then April 2023. So April 2021, they entered the area and forcibly cut wires to speakers in minarets around the mosque, silencing the call to prayer, claiming the sound was interfering with an event by the Israeli president at the Western Wall. Okay, so in this case, they just went and cut some wires, but in the next 2 cases, it was a little bit more violent. Okay, so April 2022, they actually entered the mosque, and as far as I know, that's the first time since 2014. Well, aside from 2021, but this is like the first time they went in there to like arrest people. They did that because some Palestinians barricaded, excuse me, some Palestinians barricaded themselves inside Al-Aqsa Mosque, and so they went in there. Over 150 people ended up injured and 400 arrested. And then the next year, April 2023, same thing. And what you had is you ended up having scenes like this where Israeli police went into the mosque and literal fireworks were going off because the Palestinians, they were ready for this kind of skirmish. And I think they were expecting it. They had rocks, they had fireworks to throw at police. And it's pretty unbelievable video. I'm not going to play it here. But if you follow my X, I'm going to repost this and you can view these videos. But here's one from, this is April 2022. And then here you have April 2023. And you can see the fireworks going off and there's smoke all over inside the mosque. There's another video here. You can see Israeli police storming the mosque. And it's believed that this was one of many different things that led up to the war, the October 7th attack of 2023. This among many other things, but this definitely didn't help. This led to a bunch of rockets coming from Gaza, and then there was an operation that Israel carried out against Gaza, but then, that kind of quieted down. But then October 7th, that's when Hamas launched its attack. So you can see that things have essentially been building up on the Temple Mount itself. And this year, it may be really bad because now we have this war that's going on, and Hamas has branded it or called it Al-Aqsa Flood and also Al-Aqsa Storm. And of course, that's kind of like a rallying call for all Muslims to, fight against Israel and protect the Temple Mount, Al-Aqsa. So it's probably going to be, this is my guess. So I'm guessing. I think that this year it's going to be even worse. I think it's going to be really bad. And what doesn't help things, and I agree with Gallant, is Ben-Gvir wanting to impose like really strict restrictions on Ramadan. So, oh yeah, one more thing. Last year, one reason why this was so intense is because you had Ramadan and Passover that overlapped, and whenever there's an overlap of those two holidays or those, observances, there's usually more violence and escalation. So that happened last year, but this year they don't. You can see that Ramadan ends on the 9th, and then Passover doesn't start until sundown on the 22nd. So they are separated this year. Okay, so let's read a little bit more. This is from I-24 News. Gallant, Hamas aims to enact second phase of October 7th during Ramadan. I had a couple things here. As the month of Ramadan approaches, concerns over security have prompted Israeli authorities to implement limitations on Muslim access to the Temple Mount site and Al-Aqsa Mosque. The decision, made in accordance with recommendations from the Minister of National Security, Ben-Gvir, comes amidst opposition from the Minister of Defense, Gallant, Shin Bet, and the Army. I think the Shin Bet, I think that's their version of the FBI. The restrictions include a cap on the number of individuals permitted to enter the site, with additional sorting based on age. While the details regarding the authorization of Palestinians from East Jerusalem are pending, the implementation of security measures proposed by Meir Ben-Gvir, which would allow security forces to intervene in response to provocative behavior, was rejected. Under the current plan, so this is, I guess in this first article that we were reading, this is what Ben-Gvir wanted. He wanted it to be all the way up to the age of 70. But as of right now, according to I-24 News, under the current plan, only Muslim pilgrims aged 60 or above with permits. So you might imagine that might make some people upset over there that want to go to the mosque, and people that are against Israel. It's probably not going to help. Anyway, pilgrims aged 60 or above with permits issued by the Shin Bet will be granted access to the Temple Mount. However, domestic intelligence agencies have expressed reservations, fearing that such restrictions could exacerbate tensions and fuel Hamas's rhetoric about Israel's intentions to seize the site and deny Muslims access. So here's the thing. Look, this guy right here, he's very religious, from what I can tell. He's very Zionist, and I think that he wants some kind of final conflict, based on what I've observed of him. I could be wrong, but when he wants to impose like as strict of restrictions as possible, I think that he's doing it in a provocative way. He's hoping to maybe hasten the appearance of Messiah, which Jews believe that to do that, you do good works. And by doing a certain amount of good works and keeping commandments, then you reach a certain threshold where, Messiah appears. But I think there's also the other side where you kind of try and like pave the path for Messiah, and I think that's what he is potentially doing. I think he really wants a permanent change on the Temple Mount. I could be wrong, but that's just the way that he comes across to me. Okay, so there's some more. Okay, the Jerusalem Post, October 7th, Part 2. Iran plans for terror during Ramadan, Israel charges. According to Gallant, they hope to provoke Palestinians in the West Bank, Hezbollah, Arabs, and Muslims across the region to attack and turn their rage on Israel, using the Temple Mount and tensions in the West Bank as an excuse. So, again, it's like they're reiterating their call, Hamas's initial call, and they said it a number of different ways in very plain language. They called on the Muslim world to join in. They were saying, this is the time, brothers. Come and attack and defend Al-Aqsa and liberate, Palestine and all this stuff. So here's like what I think is going to be a second big round of propaganda and a call to action to the Muslim world. Okay. However, at this point, he believes that fighting the war without hesitation must go hand in hand with reducing tensions in areas where there is no reason for there to be tensions. This is talking about Gallant. This means Gallant is strongly against National Security Minister Meir Ben-Gvir, his push to reduce access to the Temple Mount for certain Israeli Arabs or Palestinians during Ramadan, though this time he did not mention Ben-Gvir by name. Further, he pushed for over a month to allow Shin Bet-approved Palestinian West Bank workers to return to their Israeli employers. Before the war, there were around 210,000 Palestinian West Bank workers constantly going to work for Israelis, with the number of those who committed terror attacks in single digits. A vast number of terror attacks over the years have been committed by Palestinians who break through the security barrier illegally. Okay, so he's like, okay, here's a point where we can kind of ease things up. These people that come and work for Israelis, they're typically, like, by and large good. They don't participate in violence. So this is one way that we can ease pressure, right? And it makes sense to me. Despite these recommendations, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has sided with Ben-Gvir on most of these issues to date. Absent Netanyahu accepting the defense establishment's recommendations regarding openness for access to the Temple Mount and returning Palestinian West Bank workers, Gallant fears that Iran and its proxies could get the upper hand and incite the region against Israel into a series of deeper security threats. So, I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. Had a few more things. A few more things here. Israeli security officials are warning of a significant increase in alerts for attacks in Judea and Samaria, internationally known as the West Bank, and Jerusalem, ahead of the month of Ramadan, as announced on Saturday evening by KAN 11 News. In addition, there are concerns about attacks taking place within city centers across Israel. So, I don't know, we might be wrong to assume that the conflict this upcoming conflict, it seems that they want. We might be wrong to assume that it would be only at the Temple Mount and in Jerusalem. Remember, when they conducted the October 7th attack, they went to all these different kibbutzes, which are like communal farms, and all these different towns, and they went town by town, door by door. So if they do something similar, then it would make sense that it wouldn't just be focused just on Jerusalem, that it would include a number of different towns. I feel like it'd be more difficult under these circumstances to do that, because one reason why the October 7th attack was so successful is because it came completely by surprise. It was very similar to the Yom Kippur War in that it happened on a Jewish holiday. In the case of Yom Kippur, it was on Yom Kippur. Excuse me. It was on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and in that case, there were indications that something was going on. Supposedly, with this one, and I don't know, I guess this is up for debate. I'm not going to get into it, but officially, there weren't any signs of anything happening or anything indicating the attack that happened on the 7th of October, which was on what's kind of considered the 8th day of the Feast of Tabernacles. It's called Simchat Torah, and so they chose a Jewish holiday to do this, and actually a Jewish holiday where it's a day of celebration. So it's almost like it was a very sadistic choice to choose that day. But anyway, so back then, what I'm saying is, back in October, I think it would have been a lot easier than it is now, because now Israel is on alert. So to perform a similar style attack, I'm not sure if that's really possible. Up here in the north, I don't think Hezbollah would be able to do that. And if they did cross the border, you have, again, I should just look this up. You have something like a 5-kilometer buffer zone where all these towns have been evacuated. So unless, excuse me, unless somebody comes through, unless there's like things that go on in the West Bank, or I don't think anything would happen along the Egyptian border, or unless like you have groups, like militia groups that come in through Syria, through the Golan Heights. I'm not sure that they would be able to conduct the same type of attack. I could be wrong. But you also have many that live there in Israel, and so if they were coordinated, then they might be able to pull off something, or just have just a general uprising, an intifada. I think this would actually be the third intifada if that's what they declared it. So, okay, and then I'll probably skip this part because now it's just getting no, I'll read it. In the coming days, the War Cabinet will need to make a decision regarding Muslims coming to pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount during Ramadan, which is one of the main focal points for security forces. In Israel, efforts have been made to emphasize the message that war is being waged against Hamas, the Hamas terrorist organization, not against Muslims. Israel's security establishment advised the political leadership against imposing any limitations on Arab Israelis instead of proposing an age restriction for Palestinians from the West Bank. However, National Security Minister Meir Ben-Gvir is demanding that Muslims not be allowed to enter the Temple Mount at all. So this is the only place that I've seen that. We're looking at All Israel News, and I don't think that that's an exaggeration. I don't think that they're just making that up. I'm sure he did say that. Okay, last week it was reported by KAN that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with police and proposed a compromise regarding limiting the entry of Arab Israelis to the Temple Mount during the month of Ramadan. According to two sources who were present at the meeting, the police proposed that men up to the age of 40 would be prohibited from entering the Temple Mount, while the age restriction of children and women would be determined later. And then I'll skip down. Okay, during the discussion, security officials stated that the majority of quote-unquote problematic elements among Arab Israelis, and East Jerusalem residents are typically those who are under the age of 40, including individuals affiliated with illegal groups and those without affiliation but already known by Shin Bet, Israel's security agency, and the police. So, but that was as of last week, and it looks like they've upped the age from 40 to 60. And I don't have any other details outside of that. But I don't know. If I was one of these people that's considered a problematic element, then it seems like this would be a big problem for me and a really ripe opportunity to act out and do something. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's kind of like a catch-22. I guess you just have to kind of pick between the lesser of two evils, and maybe this is the best way, but I'll leave that to Israel to decide. But from what I can tell, it doesn't look like we're in for smooth sailing over the next couple months. So the dates to watch again would be the 11th of March. That's just a few weeks away. So let's see, that's it's only 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks away. So from 11th of March until the 9th of April. Okay. And then let's just leave on this. I happened to come across this as I was preparing this video. This is from the Temple Institute, February 25th on Facebook. I don't know if it's Shavua or Shavua Tov from the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is the beating heart of the people of Israel and humanity's hope for a better future. Israel's current war against its bitter enemies, near and far, is nothing less than a war for the Temple Mount and the future Holy Temple. So, yeah, that probably doesn't help things either whenever Arabs see this. A group that's intent on bringing about the third temple. They've already constructed all the instruments and tools and clothing for the temple. And they've done ritual reenactments. I've done videos about that before. They've been pretty active, and they're the ones that are overseeing this whole red heifer thing. So I'm going to be really curious to see what happens whenever they sacrifice the red heifer, because that's probably going to take it to a completely new phase. That's probably going to take it to like phase 3 of this war. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share, and I'll talk to you guys later.